the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Allison Nissen. Today, I am lucky enough to be with Anne Brooks. Anne, could you introduce yourself and tell us what you like to write?
Yes, hi, I'm Anne Brooks, and I enjoy writing psychological thrillers.
Well, that was short and sweet. Let's get right into it. Psychological thrillers. All right. So we like to play with the mind. Tell me about your latest work in progress.
So my latest work in progress is A Girl in the Water, and it is a murder mystery told from two points of view. You get the point of view of the investigation and then the point of view that takes you back in time to a teenage relationship that develops that unfortunately ends in murder.
When did you first realize you wanted to be a writer?
So I realized I wanted to be a writer about 14 years ago. I was in social work, which is very stressful and can be very depressing. And so writing kind of became my outlet to decompress during that time. And once I opened that door, the ideas just flooded out. Over the last 14 years, I've written down a dozen different ideas. Of course, only in the last 3 years did I finally sit down and focus on a singular story, which became my first published book, A Lost Woman.
A Lost Woman. So tell me about the storyline for A Lost Woman.
So Lost Woman is about a girl who has to return home to rural Alabama to care for her mother who's suffering from Alzheimer's disease. And as the story progresses, you learn that her mother was extremely abusive to her growing up. And as you get towards the end of the story, which is about the cycle of violence, Nora and her mother, Lily, go through this process of finding a way to forgive themselves and to forgive each other, to break that cycle of violence and to stop the abuse that both of them have suffered for generations.
That sounds really interesting. So I'm seeing the psychological effects for this and how it could be a thriller. So how do you get the audience to turn the page quickly? Do you have a technique?
Not so much. I really adopted Stephen King's on writing persona with writing where you just sit down and you write and you get it out. And so I find that the stories flow a lot more naturally and concise with me when I do that way. And I get them to turn the page in just the way of wanting you to get to the next thing, kind of always progressing the story, that build up to where you finally get that crescendo of, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's what was really going on. Both of my books have a twist at the end that I really want you to get to the end of my stories and say, I have to reread the whole thing now. Now that I know this, I've got to go back and read the whole thing because you'll read it so differently when you know the twist.
So you add clues in there.
Yes, I do.
I'm already intrigued. This sounds really good. Tell me about how long does it take you to write a book? How do you edit a book?
So to write a book, The Lost Woman and A Girl in the Water both wrote separate times, but they each only took about a week to write. And the reason that is I'm given 1 week in the summer to take a vacation by myself without my children, without having to go to work, be a mom, take care of the house. So I get that 1 week to write nonstop. And that's pretty much, there's very little sleep and eating that happens during that week. It's get up, write until I just fall asleep, get some sleep, get up and write again. And within the week, I typically have finished the book. Now, it's extremely rough draft. So editing for me is a very arduous process, and it takes a long time. It took about a year to edit A Lost Woman and get it ready to query and start passing around. So I'm left with a lot of work, but at least it's on paper and it's done.
Do you go off to the cabin in the woods with an outline, or do you come up with the outline, the whole idea when you get there?
So I definitely go into it knowing what I'm going to write and a general outline in my mind. Sometimes I've written a basic outline, but I really allow the story to develop itself. And I think that's where you get that kind of page turning suspense of it just keeps going and going because I'm writing it right after each other. So, but I don't go to necessarily cabin in the woods. Those times I was at my house, I just shipped everybody off.
Oh, but it sounds much more like a thriller if you're going to go off to the cabin in the woods.
I know, I know. Well, maybe if I make enough money for my books, I can afford to go spend time in a cabin in the woods.
All right. And what challenges have you faced as a writer?
So my biggest challenge is time, finding that week to write and using as much time as I can to get that done. And then when I'm going through the editing process, time is really my biggest constraint because I work full time. I have kids. So it just uninterrupted time because writing is all consuming for me. And so when I'm writing, I can't be thinking about anything else or also cleaning or also cooking or having to stop and go deal with soccer practice because I get very frustrated when I'm interrupted in my process. So I have to find that uninterrupted time. So that's kind of the biggest constraint for me is just being able to get it done.
Do you section off portions of the day, early in the morning, late at night?
Yes, I actually do it on the weekends and at midnight. So sometimes if I'm really pushing on a deadline to get something done, that's when I'm taking every little minute as soon as I put the kids to bed until I just can't keep my eyes open anymore. I'm editing or reading. And then I'll put aside some time on the weekends and say, hey, I really need the kids to not bother me for this block of time so I can get this done. And then I can then I can transition back to mom mode and then I'll be there for you guys and we'll go to do this and that and all that stuff. So,
Well, I like that, but you're showing your children, you're modeling what it could look like to be dedicated to a craft.
actually, they're the main reason that writing even went further than the first 50 pages. So, 14 years ago, I had the idea of a lost woman, never got past the first 50 pages, got pregnant, had kids. And then finally, when they started growing up and we started talking about what do you want to be? What do you want? Striving for something you like to do, having grit, it just kind of all came out. And I was like, I want them to be proud of me one day. I want them to say, my mom had a dream and she went for it and she achieved it.
How old are your kids now?
They are 7 and 8.
7, 8. So they're at a really fun age to be able to have a full conversation with.
Yes. And I have one son who's got a very gifted mind, but it also leads to him always being right and extremely argumentative because he will try to justify anything. And, but he's really fun to talk to a lot of the times when he's not arguing with me.
I had a book when my kids were about that age called The Negotiation Generation, about how they can they tried to negotiate everything, right?
Yes, that is definitely my son's for sure.
And how many books have you written in total? Have you just the 2 or?
So I've written 3 books. So I've written A Lost Woman, A Girl in the Water are books that I've personally written. And then the last one, the third one, is actually at the print right now. It is a book that I wrote with my 3rd grade class a few years ago. They found out I wrote A Lost Woman. I just finished it. And so I was very in a moment of just speaking out of pride to say, hey, I went for something. I accomplished it. You should think about what you want to do and really work hard for something because it takes hard work to finish something like this. And they wanted to read the book, of course, and A Lost Woman is for adults only, not for children. So we decided to get together and write a book. So we spent the whole year in our writing unit developing characters, developing a storyline, plot. And so we wrote that book together and then we were supposed to print it, but then COVID happened. So it kind of delayed the process. So now I'm just now getting around to getting it printed for them and they'll be graduating. So it's going to be their graduation gift in a few weeks.
Oh, that is so special.
It's out of my wheelhouse though, because it's about werewolves and vampires. So it's very much out of my comfort zone.
But developing characters that are out of your comfort zone is a great way to grow as a writer.
Yes.
Tell me what you think about feedback and any reviews that you've gotten on your work.
So with The Lost Woman, I was overwhelmed by the amount of positive reviews I received from family and friends. I was also overwhelmed about how much it would mean to me as a writer to receive that level of validation from people that I really held in high regard. So it meant a lot with the reviews and the feedback. I know though, however, I have yet to receive that first crushing review where you just ugly cry because it just hurts you to your core. I know it's coming, and so I've been preparing for it. But so far, I've just been really overwhelmed with the positive reviews that it's received.
Well, Ann Brooke, this has been a really fun conversation. How can people get in touch with you?
So I have a website, annbrooksauthor.com. I'm also on Twitter at AnnBrooks32 and on Instagram at AnnBrooksAuthor, see a theme. And I can also be found on Facebook. I have a Facebook page under Ann Brooks as well. And I also write for the Pensacola Moms blog. So every now and again, you can catch my mommy writing on there.
Well, tell me about mommy writing.
So here in Pensacola, where I'm living and where I grew up, they started it's a division of the city's moms blog. And so it's Pensacola Moms blog. And so we just write stories. I wrote an article about my son has ADHD, about what that's like being a parent of a child with ADHD. My article that's about to come out is a fishing guide. We love fishing and we fish a lot in the area. So it's just a guide to fishing. So it's just a website where moms can go to read stories from other moms or to get guides for the Pensacola area. It's a lot of writing.
Well, Ann Brooks, are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Yes.
Do you have a song that takes you back to your teenage years?
Yes. Strawberry Wine.
I won't ask any questions. Do you have a favorite thing that you like to serve guests when they come for dinner?
Besides alcohol, I do make a really good pepper cream cheese dip.
And if you won the lottery for $1,000, what would you buy?
I would buy that cabin in the woods to myself. That'll give me a good week, right?
There you go. That's right. All right. Ann Brooks, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thank you very much. This was so much fun.
You all have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Allison Nissen. Allison out. For more information about Ann Brooks, visit her website at annbrooksauthor.com. Learn, network, and grow at the Florida Writers Annual Conference, October 14th through October 17th, 2021. Or consider attending the Florida Writer Youth Conference, October 16th. For more information, visit us at floridawriters.org.